In this video, we'll be taking a look at 4 college basketball games happening on December 12th, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 8 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 4 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Missouri State versus Xavier. Let's set the scene for this one. Missouri State rolls into the Cintas Center sitting at 4-4, trying to wash out the taste of that rough night at Tulsa, while Xavier is 7-3 and feeling pretty good about itself after 4 straight wins and a big rivalry victory over Cincinnati. The books have hung a huge number here, around Xavier minus 17.5, which is the sort of spread that looks comfy on paper, then suddenly feels very sweaty with 3 minutes left and the underdog still hanging around. Xavier at home is a real thing. They have already logged wins over Marist, Lemoyne, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, St. Francis, and of course Cincinnati in this building. And the atmosphere in December on a Friday night with a ranked rival just around the corner on the schedule has that let's show off a bit energy. Tree Carroll has turned into the headline act, the shots are flying from deep, and the new coaching staff has the ball zipping side to side in a way that looks great on a highlight reel. So you can absolutely understand why the market keeps nudging this number higher. Here is the thing, though: for all that firepower, Xavier has already shown they can make things harder on themselves than they need to. Marist pushed them in a 66-62 grinder that never really turned into a blowout. Lemoyne stuck around in a 74-69 game that stayed tense late. Even that statement win over Cincinnati ended 79-74, which is terrific for the program, but not exactly a stress-free rocking chair cover at a huge number. This team wins, but they do not always slam the door on every mid-major visitor. On the other side, Missouri State is not your classic paycheck victim. They are new to Conference USA, sure, but this is a roster with grown bodies up front and enough perimeter shot making that they are not just throwing the ball into the post and praying. Keith Palak III stretches defenses, Michael Osei-Bonsu brings muscle and touch, and Kobe Williams is in the middle of a real heater with back-to-back 20-point games. That matters in a big spread game, because a dog that can actually score and run real offense tends to be much more annoying for a favorite trying to land a knockout blow. That ugly 98-74 loss at Tulsa almost helps the case here. It gives Missouri State and Quanzo Martin an easy film session, a clear message, and, frankly, a little embarrassment to channel. Teams with veteran scorers and a demanding coach usually do not shrug off a 24-point beating. They lean into it. And stylistically, the Bears are not some slow, walk-it-up outfit. They are comfortable playing in the 70s and beyond. They stay aggressive, and their turnover numbers are sane enough that they can at least get shots up on most trips. Combine that with Xavier's occasional habit of relaxing once they get a double-digit lead, and you have the classic recipe for the underdog to lurk in that 8 to 15-point window for long stretches, with the back door wide open in the final couple of minutes. As our first pick for this matchup, the Missouri State Bears to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. You have a Xavier team averaging right around 78 to 79 points per game and giving up a little over 72, matched with a Missouri State group that is scoring in the high 70s and allowing the low to mid 70s. Put those profiles together, and you are already hovering in that 150-point neighborhood before you even bring in game script, fouls, or late-game chaos. Xavier's recent home results paint a pretty clear picture of what their offensive ceiling looks like in this building. 96 points dropped on St. Francis, 88 on Texas A&M Corpus Christi, 79 on Cincinnati in an emotional rivalry game where they still spent chunks of time figuring things out. They are hitting more than 10 threes per night at a healthy clip, and when the shots fall, Cintas feels less like a college arena and more like a shooting gallery. The ball moves, the weak side is constantly under pressure, and suddenly that slow first media timeout score has turned into 40+ at the half. Missouri State brings its own set of fireworks. This is a team that has already put 92 on Northeastern State and 88 on Missouri Southern State, and even in that blowout loss at Tulsa, they still got to 74. When they are chasing a game, they do not pack it in and play for pride. They keep firing. Williams' recent surge from deep, Palek's pick and pop threat and Osei Bonsu's work on the glass all feed into an offensive identity that, while not perfect, is very capable of stringing together points in bunches. They do not need to be efficient for 40 minutes, just dangerous enough in spurts to keep the scoreboard lights busy. Big spreads and high totals often go hand in hand for a reason. If Xavier comes anywhere close to what the market expects and pushes into the high 70s or low 80s, Missouri State does not even have to play out of their minds to drag this into a shootout. You get the usual late-game ingredients: foul shots to extend possessions, quick threes from the trailing side, maybe a garbage-time dunk or two when the bench is empty. And on top of that, this is Xavier's last non-conference tune-up before the grind of Big East play, which is usually a spot where the coaching staff is more interested in letting the offense breathe and keeping confidence high than in grinding out a slow, low-possession rock fight. Honestly, the only real way this type of matchup crashes under is if both teams suddenly forget how to shoot or the whistles just disappear. With two offenses already living in that 70-plus range most nights, both comfortable firing from deep, and a projected game script that leans toward running rather than walking, the most natural story here is a scoreboard that never really relaxes. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Texas versus UConn. Picture this one in Hartford. The lights up, the camera pans the crowd, and Texas walks into a building that has seen more big moments than most NBA floors lately. You have a Longhorns group sitting at 7-3, feeling pretty good after hanging 95 on Southern at home, with Matas Vokititis dropping a career night and a whole line of guards splashing in behind him. That is the fun part of their story. The less fun part is that all of that came in friendly surroundings, and this trip is their very first true road game of the season, dropped right into the middle of a fan base that treats a December non-conference game like a regional final. On the other side, UConn is sitting at 9-1, ranked 5th in the country, and not just winning but winning with a kind of board cruelty, almost plus 18 per night in scoring margin while holding teams to 61.7 points on 38% shooting and under 27% from deep. That is the backdrop, and honestly, it matters as much as any spreadsheet number you can pull up on KenPom or Torvik. Here is the thing that really shapes this matchup. UConn is not built as a solo act. They roll out layers. Solo ball runs the show and closes games. Taris Reed Jr. bangs in the paint and sets the physical tone. Alex Caravan stretches defenses. Silas DeMary Jr. keeps the offense organized. And guys like Eric Ryba and Braylon Mullins give them that "oh great, another good player" feeling when the starters sit. All of those names are current, active pieces, and they have already been doing it in real games, including that tough 77-73 grinder against Florida where Reed came back and looked like himself again. When a team can bring back a key big man from injury without breaking its rhythm, that says a lot about depth and about how comfortable the staff is shuffling lineups. Texas comes in with a very different energy. New era on the bench, new roster mix, and an offense that can look explosive for long stretches. Vokititis, Jordan Pope, Simeon Wilcher, Camden Haida, Dalen Swain. There is plenty of firepower there, and we just saw it against Southern, plus earlier against NC State in that 102-97 shootout. But their own coach is basically doing what most fans do on message boards, saying out loud that they have problems on defense, that they foul too much, and that those fouls are a sign of weakness, not toughness. That is pretty rare honesty in a press room. It is even rarer when the schedule receipts back it up, like the 88-69 blowout loss to Virginia and the 60 points they managed in the neutral floor loss to Duke when the opponent could really guard and take away the easy stuff. Now drop that version of Texas into UConn's favorite kind of game. Hurley's group is not racing just for the sake of it. They run when the opening is clean, but they are perfectly happy to grind, to use those half-court actions, off-ball screens, post seals for Reed, and spacing for Caravan and Ball until your defense gets one step lazy. When that happens, the crowd gets loud, the runs come in waves, and opponents start making the kind of reaching fouls that Texas has been making all season, the ones Miller has been calling death by inches, because they turn 30 seconds of good work into 2 free throws and a reset. It is one thing to handle that at home against Southern. It is something very different to deal with it when every whistle in Hartford feels like it comes with a roar and a camera cut to a student section enjoying your misery. From the numbers side, the market is treating UConn like a heavy favorite, somewhere in that low to mid-teens range depending on where you look, with Texas catching a big pile of points. That kind of spread really asks a simple question. Does Texas have the defensive backbone and foul foul discipline right now to keep this close across 40 minutes in its first real road game against one of the best defenses in the country in front of a hostile crowd, with UConn at full strength and feeling good about its identity? If the answer leans toward probably not, and all of the current defensive metrics and the coach's own words lean that way, then the favorite has a very real chance to pull away in one of those classic mid-half bursts that turn an interesting game into a scoreboard check. As our first pick for this matchup, the UConn Huskies to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Texas has been playing with a fast, free-flowing style in a lot of these games, hanging 90+ on Southern, 99 on Ryder, 93 on Fairleigh Dickinson, and generally leaning on that wide guard rotation to keep pressure on the rim and the three-point line. UConn is not some plodding dinosaur either. They average 79.8 points per game and score in a very modern way, with spacing, ball movement, and multiple players who can initiate sets or finish them. When you see a total sitting around 146.5 and you know both teams have put big numbers on the board recently, your brain almost automatically starts doing that simple 80-70 math. Let me explain why that first reaction can be a little bit of a trap. Texas inflates its offensive profile at home against softer defenses. That 95 on Southern, that 100+ outing versus NC State, those are great nights, but they happen in settings where pace is loose and the opponent is not wired like UConn is on the defensive end. When the resistance jumps, their scoring rhythm changes. We have already seen it. 60 against Duke in a neutral setting, 69 in the heavy loss to Virginia, and other stretches where, once the game slows and whistle counts rise, they look much more ordinary. That is not a knock. It is just what happens to a lot of teams when they step up in class and the shots they usually get in the first 10 seconds of the clock are suddenly gone. UConn, on the other hand, shapes the whole environment. They are giving up 61.7 points per game, with opponents shooting 38% from the field and under 27% from three, and they sit near the top of the national charts in both scoring defense and defensive efficiency. That kind of profile is not just about blocking shots or getting steals. It is about stringing together possessions where the other side spends most of the clock just trying to find something clean. We saw it against Florida too. That game turned into a physical, foul-heavy grind that still finished in the 70s for both sides, not the 90s, even though there were a lot of free throws and a lot of emotion. In a funny way, more fouls can sometimes lead to fewer real possessions, and that is where Texas' biggest current flaw sneaks into the total picture. Their staff cannot stop talking about the fouling issue. Miller has flat out said that their fouling is a sign of weakness, that they have problems on defense, and local coverage has leaned into that theme, calling the constant whistles a kind of slow bleed that undercuts all the hustle. Yes, fouls create free throws, which are points, but they also break rhythm, allow UConn to set its defense, and turn what could be flowing, end-to-end games into a whistle-filled half-court puzzle. You end up with more talking between possessions, more walking the ball up, more late clock ball screens, and fewer fast break highlight plays that really drive totals over big numbers. So even though both offenses have shown they can put up eye-catching box scores, the more likely script here is not a pure track meet. It is a game where UConn's defense drags Texas closer to its usual scoring baseline, where the fouling issue tilts things toward a slower, more deliberate flow, and where UConn's own offense stays efficient but measured rather than turning this into an all-star game. If that is how this plays out, and the current defensive numbers plus the recent game states point that way more than toward a full-on shootout, then a total in the mid-100s 40s starts to look a shade too high for how many clean, high-speed possessions we are likely to get. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. East Tennessee State versus Austin Peay. This matchup has that classic December feel where a lot of people scroll right past it on their betting app, but the numbers quietly tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, look here." East Tennessee State rolls in at 8-2, sitting at the top of the Southern Conference, traveling to Clarksville to face an Austin Peay group sitting at 4-5 that has been pretty feisty in F&M Bank Arena. The market has already made its stance clear, with East Tennessee State set as a short road favorite, which is not exactly a throwaway detail when you look at how they have handled their business through 10 games. Here is the thing. East Tennessee State is playing like one of those grown-up mid-major teams that does not rely on smoke and mirrors. They come in with a scoring margin right around plus 16.9, putting up about 81.3 points per game and allowing only about 64.4, and they do it without any single number screaming fluke. The shooting is efficient, hovering in that 49 to 50% range from the floor. They control the glass better than their opponents, and they win what bettors like to call the math battle, powered by a turnover edge of about +4 per game and roughly 10.6 steals a night. That kind of profile travels. They built the attack around grad transfer forward Cam Morris III, who arrived in May and has turned into the steady focal point you actually trust in a hostile gym. He leads them at about 14.4 points per game on a ridiculous 63.6% from the field, while still contributing on the glass and as a finisher near the rim. Around him, there is real balance. Brian Taylor II, Blake Barkley, and Jalen Smith all sit in that double-figure or near double-figure zone, and the backcourt pairing of Smith and Alan Strothers gives them a dual-guard setup that mixes playmaking and perimeter shooting in a way that makes scouting them kind of annoying. When you are handing out around 16.3 assists per game, keeping turnovers under 12, and turning opponent mistakes into something like 20.2 points off turnovers per night, you start to look like the side that punishes every lazy pass and every casual closeout. Austin Peay, on the other hand, leans into chaos a little more, in a fun way but also a risky way. The Governors are scoring about 76.3 points per game and allowing roughly 68.6, and they are very comfortable living in a volatile lane. They knock down around 9.1 threes per game at about 34.5%. They rebound respectably, and they sit well above average nationally in steals at about 10.7 per game. Colin Parker leads them at roughly 15.8 points per outing on 48.1% shooting and 82.1% at the line, with Tate McCubbin, Zaire Collins, and big man Rashad Marshall all giving them double-figure production, which means they can take turns being the guy for a half. The issue for anyone leaning hard into the home underdog angle is what the deeper predictive metrics say. KenPom-type numbers have East Tennessee State sitting somewhere around 111th nationally, with an adjusted offensive efficiency near 110.0 and defensive efficiency around 104.2, at a tempo in the high 60s. Austin Peay sits closer to the 190th range, with offense around 100.6 and defense around 103.6 at a similar pace. So both teams prefer roughly the same speed, in that high 68 to high 69 possession range, but one side is simply more effective on both ends of the floor. That lines up with the records too. East Tennessee State's 8-2 mark features lopsided wins like 91-65 over South Alabama and 80-57 over Central Arkansas, while Austin Peay has worn some bruises in a recent 1-4 stretch, including a 96-84 loss to Kent State and an 84-75 loss to Tulsa. One more key detail before we land the plane on the spread. As of the latest reports referenced in the original write-up, neither team is carrying a flagged key injury. Cam Morris III, Jalen Smith, Parker, McCubbin, Collins, Marshall, and the rest of the usual rotations are noted as active, logging real minutes, with team injury pages at that time marked with no injuries to report. So we are not talking about benches and walk-ons deciding this one. We are handicapping two full-strength rotations and asking which one is more likely to be the adult in the room for the full 40 minutes. With East Tennessee State bringing the stronger overall profile, the better two-way efficiency, and a style that tends to travel more reliably than a three-point heavy home dog, the lean in this script stays with the road favorite to handle the number. As our first pick for this matchup, the East Tennessee State Buccaneers to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Pace-wise, neither team is playing like a slow, methodical grinder. East Tennessee State sits just under 69 possessions per game by adjusted tempo, and Austin Peay is hovering in that 69 to 70 range, so you are looking at roughly national average speed with a small tilt toward quicker. On that kind of tempo, their scoring profiles matter a lot. East Tennessee State is hanging around 81.3 points per game. Austin Peay is close to 76.3, and when you simply think about that combined scoring in a neutral setting, you wander into the mid-150s pretty easily as a baseline expectation. That is before you start thinking about endgame fouls, free throws, and the weirdness of potential overtime. The way these two teams actually create those points also nudges things upward. Both live in the passing lanes. East Tennessee State and Austin Peay each sit in that 10.6 to 10.7 steals per game zone, and both turn those live ball turnovers into something like 20 or more points off turnovers. That is a lot of runouts, a lot of transition threes, and a lot of 2-on-1 finishes. Austin Peay in particular is very comfortable bombing away from deep. McCubbin, Parker, and Collins together are accounting for more than 5.8 made threes per game, which means you have a real volume of shots that can swing the total line almost on their own. When you have that many threes going up and that many sloppy passes being turned into easy buckets, you do not get a calm, low-scoring rock fight very often. You get runs. You get swingy stretches where 10 points show up in the blink of an eye. We have already seen versions of that script play out in their recent results mentioned in the original piece. Austin Peay's 96-84 loss to Kent State landed on 180 total points. East Tennessee State's 91-65 win over South Alabama finished at 156, and their routine 80-57 win over Central Arkansas still found its way well into the 130s with time to spare. Now, it is fair to say that East Tennessee State's defense has real teeth on a per-possession basis, and Austin Peay's half-court defense is not completely soft either. That is true, but when both teams are this aggressive in the passing lanes, this comfortable turning defense into quick offense, and this willing to let it fly from deep, the game script naturally leans toward scoring streaks rather than a slow crawl. So, as long as that total number hangs in the low to mid 143.5 range that was referenced originally and you are not dealing with last-minute injury curveballs or a wild market move, the logic from the initial write-up leans toward expecting enough tempo, enough whistle late, and enough shot making on both sides to push this into the higher scoring territory. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. California Baptist versus Eastern Washington. This one is a sneaky little mid-major game, and honestly, it has that Friday night ESPN Plus chaos written all over it. Reese Court, small gym, loud students, a road favorite that has been living out of a suitcase for 2 weeks, and a home underdog that finally remembered what it feels like to run someone off their own floor. It is the kind of spot where casual bettors glance at the records, shrug, and lay the points, while the market quietly reminds you that nothing is ever quite that easy. On one side, you have California Baptist sitting at 7-3, with a profile that looks calm on paper but a lot more battle-tested when you look at who they just played. They went win at Oregon State, then 3 straight games against Colorado, BYU, and Utah away from Riverside, a stretch where they were basically thrown into the high major deep end and told to swim. That run did 2 things. First, it inflated their recent scores and made the last 3 results look uglier than they actually are, because Colorado, BYU, and Utah are not exactly gentle hosts. Second, it gave us a clearer read on how this team handles real athleticism and noise. They did not fold. They were still within striking distance late in Boulder. They hit enough shots to keep BYU honest for stretches, and they pushed Utah in a true road game while dropping 85 themselves. That is the kind of experience that translates when you walk into a Big Sky gym as a small favorite. What really matters for the spread, though, is not the highlight plays but how repeatable their habits are. California Baptist is built on a predictable backbone. They score a shade over 74 points per game, give up about 70, and sit comfortably in positive territory in most of the efficiency models. They are not some explosive, fragile outfit living and dying by 30-foot threes. They play organized half-court offense, lean on guards like Dominique Daniels Jr. to win late clock possessions, and have real size and rebounding with guys like Thomas Ndong and Jonathan Grimman cleaning the glass. It is not glamorous, but from a spread perspective, boring and solid is usually your friend. The other key layer is that they actually travel well. The Lancers are undefeated straight up as a favorite so far, and against the number they are 6-4 on the season and 4-0 on the road, which tells you books have been a touch slow to catch up when they leave home. That is not magic. It is just a team that defends, rebounds, and does not fully collapse when the gym turns mean. When you are laying a short number, you want a group that keeps its floor high. Eastern Washington, on the other hand, comes in at 2-7 with exactly the kind of personality that gives neutral fans joy and coaches heartburn. They play with pace, they let it fly, and they absolutely can punch above their weight for stretches, especially at home. Reese Court has already seen them hang with people they probably should not hang with, and now the Eagles are finally back there after what felt like an endless road gauntlet of UCLA, Loyola Marymount, Colorado, Seattle U, Central Arkansas, North Texas, and Denver. That kind of schedule at least explains part of the ugly record. But here is the thing, that style cuts both ways when you are catching only a handful of points against a team that does not panic. Eastern Washington is averaging over 78 points per game, but they are also giving up more than 83, and their overall scoring margin is nearly -5. They chase transition opportunities, they hunt quick threes, and they live with the consequences. It is fun, but it also means there are long stretches where the shot selection and the defensive rotations get loose. Opponents are hitting over 40% from deep against them, which is basically an open invitation for a disciplined offense to walk in, run its stuff, and keep scoring without having to play hero ball. You also cannot ignore that the Eagles' 2 wins came at home against Eastern Oregon and UMKC. Not exactly the same weight class as the high major opponents or a top 100 caliber mid-major like California Baptist. Their best trick is the random heater game, the night where the threes fall and the crowd rides the wave. That can absolutely threaten any favorite, and it is the one reason you have to talk yourself through the risk here instead of treating this like some automatic road cover. But when you zoom back out and look at consistent factors like defensive rating, rebounding, and offensive structure, one side is much more stable than the other at this spread. So while Eastern Washington can absolutely make this look sweaty in spurts, the more repeatable profile still sits with the road team, which has shown it can function in tougher gyms against better rosters and still land in the right range against comparable opponents. Over 4 quarters, that stability usually matters more than the occasional home run. As our first pick for this matchup, the California Baptist Lancers to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Now, switching gears from who covers to how many points actually land on that scoreboard, the conversation gets a lot more entertaining. If the spread is about reliability, the total for this game is about chaos potential. And this matchup quietly has a lot of it. Let me explain. Eastern Washington does not really play small ball so much as they play fast ball. They average over 78 points scored and over 83 allowed, which means their typical game lives in the low 160s in combined points. That is not a one-off spike. That is a 9-game pattern. Look at the actual results. Their first 9 contests produced totals of 154, 132, 199, 161, 164, 157, 150, 182, and 156. That is an entire schedule of games where the default setting is push the pace, score, then try to figure the defense out later. Stylistically, it makes sense. The Eagles shoot a healthy amount of threes. They are comfortable playing early in the shot clock, and their defensive numbers tell you they are not exactly slowing anyone down. Opponents are hitting right around 43% from the field and over 40% from 3, and they are getting to the line almost 15 times per night. When you combine that with a pace that encourages both teams to fire quickly, you get a game flow that is almost allergic to long, grinding half-court possessions. It is more first one to blink on defense loses that stretch than chess match in slow motion. California Baptist, on the surface, looks like the adult in the room. Their season-long scoring profile is lower, about 74 for and 70 against, and their average combined total sits in the mid-40s, which is why the number is sitting in that 150 range instead of something truly wild. They are also graded as roughly top 100 in defensive efficiency nationally, so you would not call them a pure track meet team. But context matters a lot here. That Utah game was 91-85, the BYU game closed at 91-60, and the Colorado trip finished 78-70. Those are 3 recent contests where the final totals were 176, 151, and 148. When California Baptist has been forced to play with better athletes and a little more tempo, their offense has risen with the moment instead of shrinking. The Lancers have multiple playable scorers, they shoot a ton of threes themselves, and they have enough ball handling to keep up if this turns into a game of your turn, my turn, on the perimeter. So you end up with a really interesting mix. One team loves chaos and has the stats to prove it. The other prefers control but has recently been dragged into high-scoring environments and shown it can survive there. The market total around 150.5 sits in a sort of middle ground between California Baptist's steady mid-40s world and Eastern Washington's high 60s reality. In spots like that, the question is simple. Does the slower team have enough structural control to drag the pace where it wants, or does the more frantic team pull everyone into its preferred rhythm instead? Here, the evidence leans toward a game that plays faster and looser than California Baptist's season averages. Eastern Washington's home floor, their willingness to push tempo, and their porous defense all point to more possessions and clean looks on both sides. California Baptist's recent track record against high major opposition suggests they have enough firepower to keep up if the scoreboard starts spinning. That combination usually does not reward conservative totals. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.